doing all of our circle stuff, finding the center and the radius and things like that. Thank you. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take what we know about circles and we're going to expand it a little bit. So like we did yesterday, I want to make sure we got some vocabulary down here. When they talk about the general conic form of a circle, we've dealt with this before. It's our x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, where my center is at hk. Now we've done this already. We've looked at it and we said, oh yeah, it's just the opposites of both of those values. Tell me the center, and then I square root whatever the radius is and go about my business. So, all I'm doing at the start is a little bit of review to kind of get my head back in gear around, oh yeah, that's how these work. So when I'm given a center, and when I'm given a radius, okay, I've got my h and my k, and all I'm going to do is plug this stuff in. So I've got x minus, my h is 4, squared, plus y minus, my k value is 0, squared, equals my radius squared. Now, there's a couple of things I can simplify here, and I should do that because, again, we always want things to be in their final form. Nothing with my first part. Here, if I'm minusing 0 for something, I'm really not taking anything from it. So this would just be written y squared. Would it be wrong if I wrote y minus 0? No, but we usually don't do that. And then 5 squared is 25, and that would be my general conic form of the equation of this circle. So if I'm ever given just the center and the radius, like I am on both of these, that's all I'm doing. So like on this one, we can even do it a little bit quicker. X, remember, it's minus. It's the opposite of what h is. So this one, where it's a negative center, I'd have plus 13. Y minus k squared. And then my radius is 4, and I'm going to square it.
So you just square it as like the answer?
Yep. And I'm good. You're like, ooh, I hope this is all that quick. Not exactly, but as long as we understand the form that we're working with, that's going to make this easier when we start doing completing the square along with it. Now, you know how I tend to get sometimes with wanting to explain what we're up to. So today, instead of having it all here in mumbo jumbo, I want to actually explain the process we're going to do before we do it, and we're going to jot it down to make sure that we get it, because then when we start, it should make life easier. So we're going to do 4 things. So we'll just kind of take our time with these. Okay, my first job, and we're going to kind of write a step, and then I'm going to go to number 3, and we're going to work that step, and we're going to go back and forth so you can kind of see what we're doing here. My first step is we're going to move any constant term. Now again, that just means anything that's just a plain old number. It doesn't have any variable with it. I'm going to move any constant term to the other side, bless you, of the equals. That's always my first step unless that constant term's already on the other side. That can happen occasionally, but it won't happen a lot. Now I'm not going to move that totally off the screen. I'm just going to bump it up where we can actually see what we're doing here in a minute. Okay, so my first job here is to look through my equation. If I see a number that's just a number, it's the only one here that doesn't have a variable term, that needs to get moved to the other side of the equation. Okay, so job 1, I'm going to recopy everything else that already has a variable term, but that minus 3 is going to get added to the other side. So that's always my first job. Get that constant term away from all my variables. Sort of like yesterday when we said we just wanted the x's on the side. Once I do that, my next job is to group the x and y terms together. X's want to hang out with x's. Y's want to hang out with y's. It makes sense. So what I'm going to do now is, because you'll notice in the equation, it's x squared plus y squared plus 4x plus 6y. The x's and the y's are all interjumbled. Well, we don't want that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have the x squared and the 4x together. And similar to what we were doing yesterday, there will be some steps here that a little later on down the road we'll be able to do things in multiple steps at once and make this a little shorter, but I want you to see how everything works. So I didn't really do a lot mathematically, I just rearranged a little bit. But this is going to set me up for the next step. The next step's where we start doing stuff like we did yesterday. So once we have them grouped, we're going to complete the square for x. And once I do that, I'm going to complete the square for y. So yes, I actually have to do it twice in one problem. So our whole b divided by 2 and then squaring it is coming back again. So we're going to do a little bit of side work here to make this work. So here's how I kind of want you to take a peek at this as we actually do this third step. Okay, I'm going to group my x stuff together, and I'm going to put a blank at the end of it. There's going to be a number there when we complete the square in a minute. I'm also going to group all my y stuff together with a blank at the end of it. And then on the other side, I'm going to put 2 blanks after my 3. Because the numbers I fill in here, I'm also going to fill in on this side. But I don't know what those are yet. That's what we're going to figure out right now. So here's how this works again. When I get to here, and I'm just looking at these x's, my b value, my number in front of x, is 4. Okay? So when I'm going along with my x's here, I'm going to take my b value, 4. I'm going to divide it by 2, just like we did yesterday.
Wait, why?
Because that's just what the form is. It's always b divided by 2 when we're completing the square. So whatever that number is in front of x, we're going to divide it by 2. And then we square that number. That's the value that I'm going to put in that blank with my x's. And it's also the number that I'm going to put in my first blank over on the right side. Because this is where the completing the square process comes from. Because again, x squared is a perfect square, and so is 4. I'm going to do that same thing again with my y's. I'm going to take that number that's in front of my y term, the 6, my b, I'm going to divide it by 2, and then whatever answer I get out, I'm going to square it, and that's going to be my blank that goes with my y. And also goes in my second blank on the right side. That's the longest step that we're going to have in this process, is doing my x and my y with completing the square. Because my last step then is to get this put into binomial form, which we'll talk about in a second here. And once I do that, I can find my center and my radius. sort of like what we did up above. So here's how this is going to work. Yesterday we talked about how I can go from a perfect square trinomial to my square of a binomial form. I'm going to put a set of parentheses with a squared. And yesterday we talked about how I find this number. I could do a diamond on this if I wanted to, but there's a shortcut. Yeah, when I did my b divided by 2, whatever answer I get, that positive 2, is actually what would go in there to make this work. And that's going to work every time with every one of these. Whatever my b divided by 2 was for that variable, in this case it was the 3, can go in there to create my square of a binomial. And then I just simplify 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 9 is 16. And now it looks like the general conic form that we had up above.
Do you square the 16?
Nope. Just adding those up. But now I can find my center and my radius, because remember, from when we were up here, my center is just going to be my HK. But remember, when I'm going from the equation back to the center, again, it's the opposite. So like here it was positive 13. My H value would be negative 13. My Y value here is negative 2. It would become 2. So when I do it down here, my center would be at negative 2, negative 3, because again, it's opposites on each of those. And my radius, because remember, in the general form, this number is the radius squared. So 16 is actually my radius squared. So if I take the square root, I find out my radius of this circle would be 4. And then if I wanted to graph it, I could. I could put my circle, go out 4 each way for my radius, and draw it. So you can see, you can see how this kind of combines the two methods together. It's like, oh, basically, I get the x's and the y's together, do my b divided by 2 and square it, add that in, and then just put it into the form. And that's all I am doing. Now again, I want you to see this a few times because it's not, I know it's not going to click the first time we do it. Maybe for some of you it does. But again, let's try to do a little bit of comboing here and try to make this work a little bit quicker for you too. I'm not going to do it quick on the second one, but once we get through there, I'll try to start combining things a little. Okay. Step 1. Now we don't have to go back up and write on all these, but we'll have it available for us to see here. My constant term needs to move to the other side. So I'm going to rewrite this stuff. And when we do this next time, we'll combine steps 1 and 2. Subtract that over, because I got to do the opposite to move it. So now all my variable terms are alone on a side by themselves. Once I get that, my next step is to group my x's together and group my y's together. And again, we'll find some ways to shorten this up as we get more comfortable with it. So constant term to the other side, x's and y's grouped together. Once I do that,
Why don't you just do it all in one step?
we can. We will. I'll start doing it on the other one. But I know sometimes when I start skipping steps, I'll be like, wait a minute, why'd you do that? But yeah, you could do that. You absolutely could do that in one step. So when I get down to here then, again, I'm going to group off my x's. I'm going to group off my y's. Yeah, some of you will get to a point that you're going to be able to probably combine the first 3 steps together. And that'll be great. And I'm going to run out of room for my blanks here. So we'll put them underneath. So again, once I get here, now I've got to do my completing the square with my x and my y to figure out what numbers are going to go in the blanks. So again, if I'm doing x, I take that number in front of x, the 18, divide it by 2, and then square it. And that's going to be the number that goes in my first blank. My y is going to be the exact same thing. Take that number that's in front of y. If it's negative, make sure to take the negative with. So negative 32 divided by 2 would be negative 16. Make sure if you go to square it, you use parentheses because that number better come out positive. So just a little side work and organization will make this a lot more palatable. So I get here to my last step. I've done my x, I've done my y, I've gotten my values where they need to go. Then I say, oh yeah, this is where I get to do the shortcut. I don't have to do a diamond on this. I'm just going to steal my b divided by 2 number, which is 9. And I'll put that in. Then I'm going to get my y's going here. And I look again. Oh, my b divided by 2 was negative 16. All right, let me get that in. And let's see what all this stuff adds up to. Let's see, 337 minus 336. All that for 1. And now it's in its general conic form. And now I'm ready to say, okay, my center is negative 9, positive 16. And my radius is just the square root of 1, which is 1. I've got everything I need. And basically, if you're feeling comfortable with steps 3 and 4 at this point, you've got completing the square down, even if you missed that yesterday, because that's basically what we were doing. Now, we will start to try to combo some of this together to make things a little bit easier. We're going to do number 5, and then I'm going to skip down to the last part. So let's flip on over here. We'll try to put it all together here. All right. Let's see if we can do steps 1 and 2 together. So I'm going to, on the left side, I'm going to group my x's. And I'm going to group my y's. And since we're not going to really do 6, I can expand a little here. And that 443 moves to the other side. All right, so we knocked 2 steps out at once. Cool. Now again, just like we've done, got to figure out what the blanks have for us. And I forgot to add them in here. Take that b value, divide it by 2. That's what I'll be using in my binomial in a minute. We don't waste any parts of our calculations here. And then square my b divided by 2 value. Once I get that, we do it again for y. Take my b value, divide it by 2, and then square it.
I got negative 256.
Got to have it in parentheses. Yeah, if you don't have it in parentheses, if you get a negative number, you probably forgot the parentheses. You'll never get a negative number that you're going to stick in any of these spots. It'll always be a plus. So once I get that all plugged in, you're like, shoot, I'm ready to actually get down to the answer here. X, and I'm like, oh yeah. There's my b divided by 2, my minus 14. Awesome. You're like, this really doesn't have to take up a ton of space. Nope. Y, steal my b divided by 2 from y. And let's see what all this stuff adds up to. 452, that's going to be 9. You're like, dang, that's over already. It is.
But then you have to do this.
Yep, my center, opposites of what you see there, and my radius is just the square root of my answer. And we've got our circle. The only thing that's going to be different when we get down to the bottom, the process is going to be exactly the same. Oh, yeah.
How are you getting the rim?
Because if I type this stuff right here into the calculator, so I got negative 443 plus 196 plus 256. That's where my 9's coming from. Okay, and then I'm just doing the square root of that, and that's where my radius is going to come from. The only difference when we get to the bottom is we're actually going to use the center and the radius to graph the circle. So, one final run here. Number 7. Same exact deal with my actual work. So again, we're going to do 1 and 2 together, which is group my x's, group my y's, and then move that plus 4 to the other side so it becomes negative. Now it's already time to figure out my blanks, which I conveniently almost forgot to put on the other side again. Okay. So once I get here, again, for my x's, take that value in front of x, so the negative 4, divide it by 2, and square it. And again, some of you are saying, do I have to write all this stuff? I can kind of do that in my head. That's okay. I don't care. Y, I'm going to do the same thing, but I like you to be able to see what you're doing. So only skip steps if you're really, really comfortable with everything. Because if you're not comfortable and you come to me and you go, I don't know what I did, and like there's 2 steps for the whole thing, I'll be like, I don't know what you did either. I got the same number this time. So again, once I've calculated that, and it all comes back to the b divided by 2 and then squaring it, x, b divided by 2, steal it, and then, yep, my other one will be right. Since it's a positive 2 for y, that would be a plus 2. Oh, thank you. You are correct. That would be a y for certain. And then negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Plus 4 gets me to 4. So there's my equation, if I was asked for the equation. My center would be 2, negative 2. And my radius would just be the square root of what my answer is. So the square root of 4 is 2. And then it's just kind of reviewing or rewinding back to what we did before when we were doing circles. I'd plot my center. And then to actually get kind of an outline for my circle, I'm going to go 2 in each of my directions. Now again, don't make a diamond or a square out of this. It's a circle. So just kind of do the best you can to make it at least look a little bit like a circle. And then you're set. So basically, you've got a worksheet where you're doing the same thing, just to make sure we've got this. And then we'll just sort of keep plugging our way along here, making sure we've got everything set. But again, the practice on this one will be the 4th assignment for homework check 8. Tomorrow will be number 5, and then we'll be set for that one. So again, that'll still be Tuesday. Sorry for the mix-up on that. But otherwise, that's basically what we've got.